Chapter 001 Samurai Flamenco. Now, on this aqua blue star, there are actually hundreds of species of aliens that have traveled across the galaxy and have settled here. Whether they're aliens who come to engage in peaceful diplomacy with the people on Earth, or aliens who are bloodthirsty and belligerent and try to conquer the Earth, or aliens who accidentally get lost and fall onto the Earth. In short, aliens have successfully infiltrated the entire human society with various purposes, and they disguise themselves as humans to maintain a delicate balance with humans. The only people on Earth who know nothing about this truth are the fish-lipped Earthlings. The young man with light blonde broken hair casually put his hands into his trouser pockets, slightly raised his handsome face, and said the above words with a noble and cold expression. In front of the young man, a handsome blonde man wearing weird and suspicious tight-fitting clothes, who looked like a COS salty egg Superman, looked at the young man with a blank expression. After a while, he asked innocently, So, it is your honor to allow me, a noble alien, to live in your home. The young man kept putting his hands in his trouser pockets and snorted coolly. Igniz Alphagello, accept my kindness with gratitude and remember my name with deep honor. Well, why do I need to know your name and take you home to live with me? As a fish-lipped human being, it's not your duty as a righteous partner, warrior flamenco, to help the lost and homeless aliens. So, Igniz, a young man who calls himself an alien, inexplicably starts living together with his righteous friend, the warrior flamenco. It is really gratifying. Then they got together, and it was such a heartwarming and inspiring story. Masayoshi Hazama is a graphic model who just debuted. Because of his handsome appearance that can be called a girl killer, he was discovered by a talent scout and started his own journey to become an idol star. But what is extremely contradictory to Prince Charming's appearance is that the graphic model named Jingi has a passionate heart that yearns for justice. Even after graduating from the school's ivory tower, Masayoshi Hazama never gave up the idea of becoming a hero and saving the world. In order to realize his long-cherished wish since childhood, Masayoshi Hazama asked a familiar designer to tailor a set of red hero tights for him. At night, he put on the tights and a helmet and transformed into a samurai flamenco to execute justice. Although that is what they say. In fact, in this everyday world where there are neither monsters nor aliens invading the Earth, the righteous work of samurai flamenco is only trivial daily things. For example, supervise pedestrians not to run a red light and then get pushed down by a drunken pedestrian with the 18 dragon palms. He also warned the ant not to litter. Then he was scolded by the ant with his hands on his hips, so he went to throw away the garbage in her place in despair. Or warn the junior high school students not to hang out in groups at night, and then be chased around by a group of junior high school students and gangsters, and after being beaten up, they can't even find the helmets that cover their faces, etc. Masayoshi Hazama, who transformed into a samurai flamenco, squatted in front of a small puddle in the park. With a sad expression on his face, I'm dead. He stared at the bruised corners of his mouth that were beaten by the gangsters, and then murmured to himself, It's over. There are still commercials to shoot tomorrow. Zhangbi will be killed by his agent, Ms. Ishihara. Zhangbi will be killed and skinned to make a doll for the commercial. Just when Justice's partner was feeling sorry for himself and wondering what he should do tomorrow, and worried about what would happen if tomorrow's headlines were about new graphic model Masayoshi Hazama being brutally dismembered and skinned by his agent, he saw in the reflection of the puddle a young man walking over with his hands in his trouser pockets and an indifferent expression on his face. Adhering to the idea that Justice partners must not let the young man continue to degenerate and do nothing, Masayoshi Hazama stood up suddenly, and then walked quickly behind the young man who was walking carelessly, pulled out the other man's hand from his trouser pocket, held the young man's hand tightly, and warned seriously, It is already nighttime. Students should rest at home and wait for class tomorrow. We can no longer continue to wander alone in the park. As soon as the palm of his hand came into contact with the young man's slender wrist, the graphic model who claimed to be a partner of Justice felt an amazing feeling in an instant. Even though he has only been working as a graphic model for a short time, Masayoshi Hazama, who has gradually developed professional qualities, quickly realized that these are a pair of hands that are so beautiful that they can be directly published in magazines without any post-processing. Whether it's a fair complexion, slender but not weak bones, or clean backs of hands with no villi or blood vessels at all, these are beautiful hands destined to attract attention and can directly endorse watch advertisements. When the boy whose wrist was held by Masayoshi Hazama turned around impatiently, this graphic model who has often said by fans, I forget to breathe when I see the handsome Hazama-kun, finally experienced for himself what it means to forget to breathe. From the eyebrows to the bridge of the nose to the corners of the mouth, everything fully demonstrates the treatment of God's beloved child. Even if the young man maintains an impatient expression with a frown and a cold look, in the eyes of Masayoshi Hazama, he is still handsome to the point of infuriating people. He is so cute that he wants to be taken home, so that he can treasure the miracle of the creator only for himself to enjoy. Masayoshi Hazama, who's always been portrayed as a girl killer, couldn't help but sigh. Such natural beauty is the real girl killer and ant killer. No, maybe even the boy and the uncles will be killed together. Perhaps it was because Masayoshi Hazama was too stupid to be immersed in his own thoughts. The boy sneered and asked, "Why are you holding my hand? A handsome pervert wearing a strange tights." Then, well, what I want to say is stop hanging out outside at night and go home as soon as possible. Masayoshi Hazama's glass heart was shattered to pieces by the boy's pervert. Before he had time to glue the broken glass heart back together, his sense of responsibility as a partner of justice drove him to advise the boy, "It's already very late. Your parents will be worried." The boy easily pulled his wrist out of Masayoshi Hazama's grasp and then put it into his pocket again. "I have no parents, no home, and no compulsory education courses that people on Earth need, so I don't need you to continue to influence me, Mr. Justice's pervert." "It's not a pervert, it's Samurai Flamenco." Masayoshi Hazama couldn't help but retort loudly to the boy. Then the model, who was wearing a scandalous tight suit, made a series of shameful moves that matched the tight suit. Finally, he stayed in a shameful posture like Superman and said, "Before the flower of sin blooms, its buds must be cut off." The partner of justice is known as Samurai Flamenco. A crow flew over, and the croaking was quiet. Even after the handsome graphic model suddenly made a series of extremely shameful postures, the boy's expressionless and cute face did not show any expression of surprise or couldn't help laughing. He just took out a flip phone from his pants and pressed it for a long time. After a while, the young man raised his head and said to Masayoshi Hazama, "Justice's partner, Samurai Flamenco. Very good, it's you. Take me to your home, and I will choose your home as my stronghold on the earth." "Oh, I see. Huh." Because of the boy's commanding tone, Masayoshi Hazama almost thought that the other person was his serious manager and subconsciously scratched his head and agreed with a giggle. But after he finished answering, he immediately felt something was wrong. He pointed his index finger at his nose and asked with a look of astonishment, "Why should I take you back to my house?" The young man raised his face coolly, looked up at the starry sky at a 45-degree angle, and then said in a calm tone, "Now, on this aqua blue star, there are actually hundreds of kinds of aliens that have traveled across the galaxy and are living and working here." After the boy eloquently introduced the fact that aliens had already invaded the Earth, and only humans with fish lips knew nothing about it, the flat model, who was completely out of the situation, was dumbfounded. Seeing that the young man had no intention of continuing, Masayoshi Hazama could only ask tentatively, "So?" The young man scoffed disdainfully. "Why do you still need to ask? I have already made it so clear. Why can't you understand? A fish-lipped earthling, I am an alien from the Alpha Jello galaxy. It is your honor to allow me, a noble alien, to live in your home." The young man kept putting his hands in his trouser pockets and snorted coolly. "Ignis Alpha Jello, accept my kindness with gratitude and remember my name with deep honor." Masayoshi Hazama held his forehead and covered his face when the boy said something to himself and made the decision for him. For the first time, he met someone who was more difficult to communicate with than himself. "Well, why do I need to know your name and take you home to live with me? This is the first time we've met. We're still strangers, and I'm here to persuade you to go home as soon as possible." The young man squinted at Masayoshi Hazama with a look that said, "A small human being doesn't even know such a simple reason." Then he cut impatiently, "Yuluin, isn't it your responsibility as a partner of justice, Samurai Flamenco, to help the lost and homeless aliens?" So, the righteous partner Samurai Flamenco inexplicably led a boy who claimed to be an alien back home. Chapter 002 Samurai Flamenco. In the spacious and brightly decorated high-end apartment, Ignis glanced at the clean apartment with disdain, then turned to Masayoshi Hazama, who'd just walked in and said, "This is your home? You are still a rich earthling. You can't tell it from your hobby of hunting for novels." In the short time we spent together along the way, Masayoshi Hazama had already gained a deep understanding of Ignis' ability to unconsciously attract hatred. He was no longer able to be angry with this alien boy who exuded a high-end, foreign-style atmosphere. He just responded vaguely, "Well, most of the rent for this apartment is paid for by the company. Of course, I also pay part of it myself. I will definitely bear the future. You sit down for a while, and I'll go in and change my clothes first." Although Ignis' cute face always had a look of disdain, the boy's two paws still scratched his body upright, fully practicing with practical actions what it meant for Grandma Lu to enter the Grand View Garden. Fearing that Ignis would accidentally get an electric shock if he scratched around, Masayoshi Hazama quickly pulled the boy to sit on the sofa, then poured a glass of water and handed it to him. Because he was worried about the young man with a cold expression but still curious eyes, Masayoshi Hazama warned him again before getting up and entering the bedroom. You sit here and play for a while, and wait until I change my clothes and come out. Teach, you are such a stingy earthling. Ignis muttered in a low voice and hummed in agreement. Since you sincerely requested me, then the reasonable Lord Alfagelo reluctantly agreed to your request. You must remember my kindness. The graphic model, who somehow owed another debt of gratitude, sighed feebly, then walked into her bedroom and began to change out of her naked tight clothes. Sitting on the sofa board, Ignis looked around at the furnishings in the apartment, then picked up a fashion magazine on the coffee table and started reading. Although Ignis went to the fashion magazine, judging from the speed at which the boy was flipping through it, it was obvious that he was not flipping through it casually to kill time, but was purposefully preparing to find something in the magazine. And when Ignis, who had been flipping through the magazine quickly, suddenly stopped and paid attention to a certain page, it obviously meant that the boy had finally found what he wanted. Plain model, Hazama Masayoshi? Huh? What's wrong? Masayoshi Hazama, who had changed into a pair of short-sleeved shorts, heard the boy read his name softly and then responded incomprehensibly. He walked towards Ignis and asked, "What are you looking at?" "Oh, these are advertisements I took on some time ago, and my agent also threw a copy of the magazine as a sample. Let me tell you in advance, I am not the kind of narcissistic guy who plasters posters of myself everywhere." Ignis ignored Masayoshi Hazama's self-deprecating joke and just moved his eyes back and forth between the lazily dressed real model and the handsome and fashionable photos in the magazine. After a moment, the boy raised his head with a cute face and said seriously, "The photography skills of the people on Earth are so bad. The photos are far less beautiful than the real people." Thank you for the compliment, Mr. Alien Friend from the Alpha Giro Galaxy," Masayoshi Hazama said casually. After taking the magazine with his photo from Ignis' hand, the handsome graphic model looked at the alien boy with a dissatisfied expression and began to ask seriously, "So, Mr. Alien Friend, what is your home address? What are your parents' names? It's okay to stay at my house tonight, but I have to ask my friend to take you back tomorrow. Also tell me your parents' contact information. You need to call them to let them know so as not to worry." Ignis looked at Masayoshi Hazama with a cold expression and then said, "You don't believe me. Okay, let's stop the alien game. It's already so late. After informing your parents, go take a shower and rest. The guest room has been tidied up." Masayoshi Hazama showed a helpless smile to the boy, stood up and walked to the other side of the sofa, reaching out to rub the boy's hair. "It's common to have quarrels with your parents at this age, but running away from home is not good. Go home obediently." Before Masayoshi Hazama's hand could even touch the young man's light blonde hair, the cold-faced young man took out a toy water gun from nowhere and shot it into the handsome face that he relied on for food. When the flat model, whose world was completely submerged in water, suddenly came back from his trance, he was shocked to find that he was holding a large bottle of warm milk, standing stupidly in front of the sofa. The TV behind Masayoshi Hazama was turned on at some point, and the sound of fierce fighting entered his ears from the high-quality speakers, which made him feel like he was actually there. And Ignis, who had just been advised by him not to quarrel with his parents, was curled up on the sofa like a lazy black cat, holding a cup with milk and sipping it. The boy's red and plump lips looked very sexy when stained by the pure white milk, which made Masayoshi Hazama, who didn't know why, swallow a mouthful of saliva. What the hell is going on? In a blink of an eye, a large bottle of warm milk appeared in my hand. Ignis, who was lazily lounging on the sofa, drinking milk and watching TV, seemed not to notice the sudden awakening of the model. He focused his eyes on the screen, not even casting a glance at Masayoshi Hazama. "Earthlings, give me another glass of milk." The alien boy, who had received no response to his order for a long time, finally looked away from the screen with a frown. After looking at each other for a moment with the flat model who had a stunned and ridiculous expression and couldn't figure out what was going on, Ignis made a low, cut sound, as if he was regretting that he could no longer control the other person. Before Masayoshi Hazama asked about his doubts, Ignis was already very self-conscious about confessing or showing off what had just happened. This is the mental interference device of the Alpha Giro Galaxy. After spraying the drug inside into the enemy's face, it can put the opponent into a deep hypnotic state. Fish-lipped earthlings, now they finally understand that I am a great existence from the Alpha Giro Galaxy. A mind-disrupting device? Is this the same thing as the toy water gun sold at street stalls? Although the lingering sense of absurdity made Masayoshi Hazama unable to accept the setting that the world suddenly became fantasy, but whether it was the TV that was turned on out of thin air, the milk that suddenly appeared in his hand, or the unconscious passage of more than 10 minutes, all of them explained one problem. He was really hypnotized for more than 10 minutes just now, and under the boy's command. He worked as a Filipino made to serve him. After realizing that the angelic-looking boy in front of him, who could attract countless people of the opposite sex, was really not an ordinary person wandering out at night, Masayoshi Hazama's expression suddenly became serious. He immediately switched from the gentle Big Brother channel to the samurai flamenco mode. Adhering to the principle of the Justice Partners protecting the Earth, he sternly asked Ignis, "Who are you? What is the purpose of coming to the Earth? Are you the vanguard sent before the invasion of the Earth?" Huh. Ignis was obviously taken aback by Masayoshi Hazama, and the noble and cool boss-like expression on his face completely collapsed, accidentally revealing his silly and cute nature. "What are you talking about? My aircraft crashed on the Earth, and I got lost and couldn't find my way home. Didn't I already say that at the beginning?" So that's it. Compared to Ignis' surprise, Masayoshi Hazama was not much better. The sight of crows flying past was the truest portrayal of Mr. Flat Model's heart at this moment. After he was stunned for a long time, he finally scratched his face and remembered. This is an alien friend that he picked up and brought home because he was lost in the park. Masayoshi Hazama, who had just switched to the Samurai Flamenco channel, after learning that the crisis on Earth had been resolved, returned to his Shea Jensa-like Urk model mode. He rubbed his head and said with a silly smile, "Haha, that's it. He's really a lost alien." And Ignis, who had just shocked the opponent's magical brain circuit and accidentally exposed his stupid nature, snorted coldly, once again put on a noble and cool expression begging for a slap in the face, raised his chin, and looked down at the opponent and said, "I've said it before. It's just a certain fool who always regards the noble Alpha Jiro as a runaway boy from Earth. Underage, lost, can't find a way home." Masayoshi Hazama babbled, counting each word with the boy on his fingers, and then said with a serious face, "Apart from the fact that you are not from Earth, aren't you still a boy who ran away from home?" Ignis was startled, and the aloof image that had only been repaired for a few seconds collapsed again, and he said blankly, "Is that so? So, I am running away from home." That's right, an alien boy who ran away from home and couldn't find his way home. As Masayoshi Hazama spoke, his passion for justice ignited again. He patted the boy's thin shoulder and said, "Don't worry until you find a way to go home. The guest room in my house will always be open to you." Ignis, who was still thinking hard about how he had fallen from a high-octane alien friend to a runaway boy, his eyes narrowed when he heard this, and he raised his face and glared at Masayoshi Hazama's face with a knife. "How dare you let me, a noble Alpha Jiro star, stay in the guest room? Why don't you kneel down and cry for me to stay in the master bedroom? Are you kidding? This is my apartment. Why should I stay in the guest room?" Masayoshi Hazama pushed back, unwilling to be outdone. Even an alien has to stay in the guest room. What should I do if both of them insist on sleeping in the master bedroom but don't want to go to the guest room? The solution, of course, is to sleep together on the same bed in the master bedroom / greater than over equal to less than over equal to / Chapter 003 Samurai Flamenco. A mere human dares to snatch the quilt from Sir Alpha Jello, the fair-skinned boy on the big soft bed, who was completely naked and wearing only a pair of shorts, threw himself on the quilt with an angry look on his face. He gritted his teeth and fought hard with Hazama for justice. Why don't you offer the quilt respectfully, stick out your butt, and beg for forgiveness from Sir Alfajiro? First, he was snatched away from the bed by Ignis, and now Masayoshi Hazama, who wanted to snatch away the quilt, was also extremely angry. He also clenched his teeth and pulled the quilt on his body tightly without letting go. "The quilt I gave you is lying next to it. Why do you have to snatch it from me? Stop pulling it." "Do you think I can't tell? This bright yellow quilt is the best." Ignis pulled the quilt covered by Masayoshi Hazama hard and tried to cover himself. "Let me go. Are you just having trouble because the color of the quilt is green? You are such a difficult child." Masayoshi Hazama guarded the quilt, covering himself in a fit of laughter and tears, trying hard not to be pulled over by the boy to expose his red body. Then he tried his best to persuade the boy. "Wait, please stop pulling it first. Can I find a quilt that is not green for you? Can you stop pulling it and it will be exposed?" Ignis straddled Masayoshi Hazama in an ambiguous position, dragging the quilt from him while holding his breath, gritting his teeth, and not having the time to speak. However, the boy's thin body does not contain any amazing power of aliens. He is completely like a human boy who has just grown taller and taller. In terms of strength, he cannot compare with a lean but muscular Masayoshi Hazama. After finally realizing that he had no way to gain stage victory and alien dignity from his opponent, "Hey, it's just a quilt, okay?" Ignis, who had been using all his strength to grab the quilt just now, suddenly let go and stared at Masayoshi Hazama in silence, not knowing what he was thinking. Masayoshi Hazama was also confused by Ignis' sudden change. Looking at the young man who fell silent for a while, he was also a little frightened. Could it be that the next moment this guy would cry with red eyes? However, it turns out that it is too naive to use the brain circuits of ordinary earthly teenagers to try to figure out the level of middle school of Alpha Jiro. After a short silence, Ignis suddenly burst into high-pitched laughter and said with approval and relief, "Huh. Although you are just a mere earthling, since you can achieve temporary victory under Lord Ben Alfajero, then I recognize your qualification as my old enemy. Don't be too happy. The one who wins in the end must be Lord Ben Alfajero." Hey, young man, your criterion for victory is to hold on to the quilt and not be snatched away by you. Don't you think it's too low level? Also, what is the strange setting of the old enemy? I am a partner of justice, not a concave convex man who specializes in fighting small monsters. Mr. Graphic Model, who had just protected the quilt from being snatched away by the boy, just listened to the boy's declaration of his old enemy. While he was madly complaining about Ignis' brain circuit in his heart, he was relieved that he no longer had to fight for the quilt such a childish behavior. Now, Ignis won't make any more troubles, right? Go to bed quickly. Stupid human being, so you are still too naive. Just when Masayoshi Hazama was thinking, the battle for the quilt is finally over, Ignis caught the gap between the quilt and the sheets with his agile movements, sophisticated posture, precise aim, and coquettish movement, and then suddenly got in like a slippery fish. My old enemy, come and fight me for 300 rounds. Either you will die today, or I will live. Masayoshi Hazama. Either I die or you live, Pachorkaminia. Zer angle, _ in a life and death battle. Isn't it the same outcome that I die or you live? I'll go. An unknown creature with a cold body suddenly got into the warm bed. The cold air that came in along with the young man's smooth body made Masayoshi Hazama shiver. Before Masayoshi Hazama could control his trembling teeth, the boy twisted his body, which was only wearing a pair of shorts, and pulled it against his body so that his cold skin was in close contact with him. Eat my max trick, the highest secret of physical skills, absolute zero culling change. Before Masayoshi Hazama could push away the boy who was clinging to him and absorbing the heat, he heard Ignis exclaim as if he had discovered some shocking scandal. Look, you actually sleep without clothes on. You sleep naked without clothes on. Hentai. I don't want to be said like that by someone who only wears a pair of shorts. Masayoshi Hazama finally couldn't bear it anymore, turned over and pressed Ignis under him, propped up his body with his hands to block Ignis' sight and said, "I've had enough fun. Please stop, Mr. Alien running around in a pair of shorts." Huh, what a cruel and vicious evil force. But the righteous Lord Alfajero will not be defeated. The young man raised his face and said with scorching eyes, "Come on, ravage me severely. Today's sacrifices are for the peace of the world that will be liberated tomorrow. Tyrant and cruel flamenco, if one Alfajelo falls, thousands of Alfajelo will surely stand up. Your tyrant rule will not last long." Masayoshi Hazama was completely numb to the magic of Ignis' brain circuits. He just lay down tiredly and said vaguely next to the boy's body that was gradually warming up, "Stop making trouble. It's already very late. Go to bed. I have work tomorrow." Masayoshi Hazama's full-time job is as a graphic model. Although he usually likes to wear that shameful tight suit and go out to transform into a samurai flamenco to maintain justice, most of his daytime time is still taken up by modeling work. When I met Ignis in the park just now, it was already late at night after 11 o'clock. Then drag the boy back home and go back and forth like this until he rolls into bed. It is already past midnight, which is the time for ordinary people who are not nocturnal otakus to fall asleep long ago. In fact, Masayoshi Hazama, who worked hard during the day and had to maintain justice at night, was already sleepy. If Ignis hadn't made such a fuss over a quilt, he would have fallen asleep and met Zhou Gong. After saying this vaguely, Masayoshi Hazama immediately fell into a state of light sleep where he was half conscious and chatting freely with Duke Zhou. Then Masayoshi Hazama, who was in a daze, noticed that the boy moved around in the bed to find a good position. After he fell asleep obediently, he said unforgivingly, "Since you have sincerely begged me for mercy, then I will let you go here. It won't happen again." It seems that he has picked up a very troublesome guy. Masayoshi Hazama thought in his inner world, and it is indeed strange for two naked men to sleep together. It is better not to sleep too hard. After he falls asleep, I will go to sleep on the other side. As for sleeping in another quilt, it meant that Ignis had successfully snatched the yellow quilt or something. Masayoshi Hazama, who was now sleepy, didn't care anymore. Such a bottom line that I stubbornly adhered to at the time. Many times when I think about it later, it feels like it doesn't matter at all. Although Masayoshi Hazama kept telling himself in his mind not to sleep too hard and to get up later, he couldn't stop his consciousness from gradually slipping away and his sleep gradually deepening. Ignis beside him had quickly fallen asleep, but the boy's even breathing inadvertently made Masayoshi Hazama's sleepiness more intense, and he began to feel without restraint or limit. There would be nothing wrong with just falling asleep like this. Maybe it was because he was too sleepy after a busy day, or maybe it was because an unexpected guest got into his bed and it became warmer. Masayoshi Hazama's original idea of changing positions became less and less, and he fell into a deep sleep in the warmth of sharing the same bed with Igniz. Chapter 004 Samurai Flamenco. After the ding dong, electronic doorbell rang in his ears. Masayoshi Hazama, who was sleeping in, turned over impatiently and muttered in a low voice. Who is it? It's so noisy so early in the morning. Just when Masayoshi Hazama muttered vaguely and changed his position to continue sleeping, the warm body touched by his backhand arm made him break out in a cold sweat. He was obviously sleeping in his own bed. How could he touch other people's bodies? The IQ of human beings plummets when they are half awake and half asleep in the morning, so Masayoshi Hazama did not recall at all the boy he picked up last night or the tragic incident of being co-sleeping while fighting for a quilt. He just suspected that some ghost was pressing down on the bed. In an instant, he was awakened by the coldness that ran through his body, and he opened his eyes in shock. Then, Masayoshi Hazama saw the peaceful profile of the sleeping boy. Before his mind was fully awake, he even thought he saw an angel. Well, in the end, the doorbell that kept ringing like a reminder succeeded in helping Masayoshi Hazama regain his IQ. He finally recalled what happened last night when he picked up the boy who refused to come home in the park, then discovered that the boy was an alien, then lived with the alien and even slept with him, and then Masayoshi Hazama suddenly realized that it was better not to think about it. The cliff that was urging people to die outside so early in the morning was Ms. Ishihara, the manager of the alias Jusshirtai. Although Masayoshi Hazama was not intimidated by the illusion of Sadako crawling into bed and sleeping next to him, when he suddenly realized that he had left Master Miyatsu outside the door for so long, this graphic model who had not been working for a long time and had fully experienced the dire straits of life was immediately frightened. He hurriedly put on pants and clothes without even having time to put on his slippers and rushed to the door to open the door. As soon as the door lock was unlocked, Masayoshi Hazama didn't even have time to look at the face of the visitor before he immediately bent down at 90 degrees and bowed to apologize. Mrs. Shihara, I'm very sorry. I didn't have a good rest yesterday. I got up too late today and left you outside the door. It was really not my intention. Please forgive me. He was so nervous that he didn't even have time to break up the sentence. After sputtering out his apology in one breath, Masayoshi Hazama raised his face slightly in panic and looked at the other party's expression. Miss Emma Ishihara's face was indeed blackened into charcoal. The veins next to the two eyebrows jumped into intersections, right? Masayoshi Hazama was so frightened that he quickly wanted to run away, but the manager Ishihara, who was exuding black resentment, grabbed his golden hair, pulled back the handsome face that he relied on for food, and started spraying venom. Hazama, Masayoshi-kun, at 7:30 last night, I called you specifically to inform you about the job interview this morning, right? When Masayoshi Hazama was dragged back by the great demon King Ishihara with his golden hair, his face full of anger, before he could reply, the other party pinched his face with a swift movement that was the essence of dragon claw hands. The force was so strong that Masayoshi Hazama almost thought his jaw was going to be crushed. The great demon King Ishihara was using the violent face slimming, TIFA, technique that he had honed through many battles to modify the facial contours of Masayoshi Hazama. He said with a dark face and suppressed his anger in a low voice, "Do you know how many handsome guys there are nowadays with beautiful faces and eyes that can sparkle and seduce people? That's what I'm following. Dumplings are making their way into the entertainment industry one after another, right? You have finally gained some fame through shooting print advertisements and are qualified to audition for backup dancers. How dare you oversleep for such a reason? Do you want to experience the taste of death in Santuchuan?" As Demon Lord Ishihara became more and more angry as he spoke, and pinched his chin harder and harder until it made a rattling noise, Masayoshi Hazama, who couldn't even speak, could only think in his heart with tears in his eyes and grief. It turns out that this is how the sexy pointed faces of senior brothers and sisters come out. Comrades, you have worked really hard.